Welcome to Pantheon Rise of the Fallen Community Q&A. I am Jamie Savanya Henry, and we have with us Creative Director Chris Joppa Perkins to answer your questions. Say hi, Joppa.
Hey, everybody.
These questions were gathered ahead of time from the community on Discord and the official forums. And if we have a little bit of time at the end of this session, Joppa may take some questions live. We'll see. But first, let's hear from Joppa about what the team has been doing and how things are going. So go, Joppa.
Well, as you can probably imagine, we've been heavily focused on Mad Run, and that's both from an art and a design perspective. So that's been the majority of what we've been working on. As we're approaching now the drop date of season two, we're starting to shift some of our efforts now onto season three content, which you'll be hearing more about soon. There's been lots of good bug squashing that's gone into prepping for season two. I actually want to pull up a list here of some of the more notable ones. I meant to have this pulled up, but that's okay. Let me find it real quick. One of them I know is we've fixed NPC flee speed. So now when NPCs are at a health threshold where they're going to flee, they're not going to do so like setting a land speed record. They're actually going to flee at a reduced speed now, which is cool. There's been significant updates to NPC pathing and the nav mesh that I think is going to solve a lot of the issues where NPCs were getting stuck, where they were fleeing and getting kind of stuck somewhere where you couldn't interact with them anymore. So there's been lots of fixes and improvements to that, which I think was a really big one on a lot of kind of the tester list. We did fix the Windstrider Mastery stacking and just the Windstrider stacking issue in general. There are a lot, I'm just going to admit it, there's a lot of stacking issues that we need to get cleaned up. And essentially what's happening is you have buffs especially that are not meant or intended to stack, that are stacking in situations where mastery is involved, because each of the mastery upgrades counts essentially as a discrete ability. And so there were situations where you were able to have, the lower level or the base version of the spell stack with a mastery level version of the spell, and you could end up with 2, 3, 4 stacks of Windstrider. And obviously that got a little out of hand. So we fixed that. There are still several other cases where certain buffs are stacking when they shouldn't be, and we're going to tackle that more holistically with it's kind of a pass on our stacking rules in general. It's really it's too manual of a process for us right now to set up all the individual stacking states and kind of the cross comparisons that need to happen. We need to handle it more kind of fundamentally, and we plan to do that soon. So we fixed Windstrider, but there's still several more, and we're just going to kind of let those roll for a little bit longer until we treat it more holistically. One cool thing that we did is now NPCs. So, how to make something like this concise? Right now, every NPC has a list of abilities that they can use in combat, and essentially, right now, those NPCs will walk through their abilities, and as they come to each one, they'll decide: can I use this now? Do I have, is it on cooldown? Do I have the right resource? Is the right condition being met, etc.? And if so, they'll use the ability. If not, they'll walk to the next one and keep going that way. That's what we have now baseline, and then those hook into different targeting condition parameters where we can say, when you go to check whether you can use this ability or not, look and see if somebody is currently bleeding, or prioritize a target that's not currently poisoned. So we have that working as well. The next step in the evolution of this system is going to be a priority-based condition system, because I want an NPC who I've given a heal to, let's say, they have a strong heal. I want that NPC to use that heal on themselves or on an ally when they need to. So if I say, when you are at 50% health or less, use this heal. I don't want the NPC to walk through every ability until they just happen to walk to the heal. And then they say, oh, yeah, I need to use this. I want them to stop what they're doing, even if they have to interrupt themselves, and use that heal. And that's what the priority system is going to be. That's kind of the next layer of the NPC ability logic so that we can have much more finely tuned NPC responses when those criteria are met. And then the third iteration, the third evolution is kind of the full blown encounter design system where we're able to take that into scripting out more complex encounters and doing even more cool pinpoint type stuff. All that being said, one of the steps that we've taken to help NPCs be more efficient in their ability usage is when it comes to weapon techniques. And right now, since NPCs can spawn with a large variety of different weapons, we have they in their ability list, they have the different techniques related to those weapons. The problem is if an NPC spawns with a main hand dagger, they don't need to check staff techniques. They don't need to check fist techniques or sword techniques or anything like that. They only need to be concerned with piercing techniques. And so what we've done is actually now NPCs, they will purge any techniques in their ability list that don't relate to the weapon that they've spawned with. So they actually know what weapon they've spawned with, therefore they know what techniques they're able to use, and then we purge a lot of those unneeded abilities out of the list, which makes their ability walking much more efficient. That's been a cool change. The last thing that I'm going to mention briefly, and then we're going to talk about it more later, is some of the really cool stuff we've done with player lighting. And there's kind of a lot that goes into that, but I want to wait until we get to it. And then I'm also just thinking of one other thing, and that is we've adjusted shields. And I cannot remember if we've talked about this, like the details of this in Discord yet. But up until, currently the way shields work is you have a block or a block rating or a block chance, essentially, which governs how likely you are to block with your shield. But when you do successfully block with a shield, it's a 100% mitigation. And that's not the intended mechanic. It's not intended to be a 100% mitigation. What we've introduced now and what will be coming in with season 2 is the introduction of a new stat called block value. And block value actually determines the amount of damage that's mitigated through a shield block. Right now we have, especially paladins, but warriors as well, who are able to, push up their block chance to a really high degree. And then they have this incredible, tanking ability, damage mitigation coming from these 100% mitigative events with their shield. Now there's going to be block value on these shields. And the way we're approaching that is, bucklers are going to be kind of the lower end of that spectrum, all the way up to your tower shields, which will be the highest block chance and the highest block value. And you want to obviously have more block value so you can mitigate more damage coming in. That'll be a pretty big change coming in with shields. That'll kind of require some recalibration of the way that item is approached, as you guys are making decisions about what you equip and whatnot. But that's another cool change as well. I'll stop there. I could keep going, but we'll cover a lot of the other stuff as we go through.
Okay, let's start with what I know a lot of people are wondering. Summoner, when?
I don't have an ETA yet. I can't say when just yet, but soon.
And soon. Oh, you're killing me. Season 2? Is it going to be in season 2?
No.
You don't know?
No, but it won't be too long after that before we'll start seeing some new classes.
Okay. All right, I guess we can live with that. All right, let's get started with the questions. Yeah, I know you guys are going to be disappointed. It's okay. You'll be okay. So the first question is, this month's Q&A is being held on a Tuesday instead of a Thursday. It feels wrong and bad. Why do you do this? We can't let you guys get comfortable. Just switching stuff up, making things new. Maybe my Tuesday was more free. I don't know. Mostly it's just we're trying to get used to a 6-week development cycle, and this is what we came up with. So you guys are all here, so that works, right? It is Tuesday, Mike. Question number 2. With almost one season under the team's belt, what's the mood going forward? Cautious optimism for the rest of the year, being able to meet and maintain this cadence? Joppa?
The mood is confident. The mood is excited. As far as optimism for the rest of the year, I'll put it to you this way: whatever we have to do to make sure that each season drops exactly 6 weeks after the previous one, that's what we're going to do. So in that regard, confidence is high, excitement is high because we've got some really cool content coming uh, in just a few days. We've got really cool content coming 6 weeks after that. We've got really cool content coming after that, and we're going to be mixing in some class introductions and stuff to some of these season events as well. And we've got some really good stuff coming down the pike. So yeah, one thing you can count on is we are not going to miss our dates.
Yeah, I'm just going to say in general, the team has been very excited, very happy. We love the way this is going. This is our jam. This is what we want. And I assume you guys like it. You guys like it? Cool with you guys? Yeah. Okay. So we have a lot of new players coming in. We have a lot of supporters, and we were asked, what is the meaning behind the name Pantheon Rise of the Fallen? And you would be the guy that would know that.
Good question. It's a great question, actually. I wonder how many people have thought that along the way. So the honest answer, like the real answer, is Brad came up with the title Pantheon Rise of the Fallen at the very beginning of the project before I was here, based on a game mechanic that was originally intended to be one of the major themes of the game. And that game mechanic ended up being shelved very, very early on before I joined the team. So in the earliest Pantheon concept days, like back when it was like still being concepted out, most of it was just, on paper before really anything had been actually implemented. It was envisioned that there would be these kind of hero characters that you could find throughout the world that once slain, or once they had been slain through some kind of event or whatever, you could essentially absorb them or absorb their essence in some way and then conjure them up or like take on their likeness for a short period of time in battle. And so you could kind of like collect these different personas that existed in the world, and that was kind of the rise of the fallen piece, was this idea of those entities, those personas living on, those fallen heroes living on through the players. That was my understanding, because I've never been the biggest fan of Rise of the Fallen, but that wasn't for me to a call for me to make or anything, and it's obviously something that we've kind of grown pretty attached to, and I'm much more of a fan of it now because since then, what it's become to mean for us, now that that whole mechanic and theme is not even in the picture anymore, it's become more reflective of the current concept of the game, which is in that it represents the numerous different lives, people, beings that have been displaced from their home worlds, their home realms, and mysteriously shipwrecked together on Terminus. And so there's this theme of these displaced lives having in a sense fallen, and now are on this journey of rising from that fallen state, carving out their destiny in this new place. And it feels, and interestingly, it feels very fitting, and has become something I think we've all been more endeared to as the current concept and theme of the game kind of took shape. So that's a quick little history on that.
That's fun. I didn't know any of that. I love that.
And people also used to pronounce Felwythe, Felweath, and Felweathy. That's another fun fact you probably didn't know that I wish I had never known. But I know, and now you all know. So you're welcome.
Yeah, yeah, that's right up there with some of those older EverQuest names. Kinos.
Well, that's how
That's right.
I said
Yeah.
Quanos. So
Yes.
I can't I
Yes.
can't I can't elevate myself too high above the Felwethi people because I said Quanos. I, you know, I don't know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Felwethi just.
But that's right. We
Whew.
have Steve Clover now, so we can find out what those actually are.
Mhm.
And I did ask. All right. So do we still use Houdini in our pipeline?
No, we don't use Houdini at all.
Okay. The violin music we hear at the Realm Select, is that staying? And who made it? And can they tell them how much they like it?
Oh, thank you. So I composed that. I appreciate that feedback. I'm so glad to hear that you like it. It is staying. It will likely get a sonic makeover. Our PVL friends they're too good. So I would love to hear that song. It's called Terminus. I would love to hear that song kind of taken by them and made better and just more robust. But I'm really happy. I've been really happy with the way that it's kind of come to represent Terminus and kind of capture the spirit of our game. It's been cool to see our PVL team take it and take the themes of that song, the musical themes and expressions and phrases, and weave it into other pieces of music in the game too. So, but yeah, it'll be staying. And thanks again.
It is, it's good, it's pretty, and it's just sort of iconic at this point. It's when you hear it, you know Pantheon. All right, so is the experience leveling speed going to be like it is for release? What is the level cap at release? And do you plan to increase XP slightly for solo players?
Um, okay, so the experience curve, the rate of experience right now is going to go through several more iterations on the way to release, just like most things. It'll continue to be tweaked and whatnot. I will say though that the current rate of experience is not too far off from where it will land at launch ultimately. But we are continuing to increase the time to kill. The general time to kill right now is a little bit too fast. Um, and so as we do that, as we continue to increase time to kill bit by bit on this kind of long balancing road, ultimately the amount of NPCs that you will need to slay to achieve kind of that optimal pace of experience gain is going to decrease. You're not going to be killing as many NPCs to gain the same amount of experience. And the idea there is also that it will make grinding feel in and of itself a little bit less tedious than it feels right now. Um, if I had to speak to the future and say what it will feel like at that point, I would say it it should not take quite as long to get into the 20s, the level 20-ish range as it currently does right now. So that's one way that the experience curve will kind of tweak and ultimately where we're going to be pushing it to when we think more long term. We want players to be able to get up to that level a little bit more quickly than they do right now. Um, but from there, it will kind of slowly ease back into something very close to the current pace as you get closer to that level cap, which to answer that question is 50. Um, so that's kind of an idea of where experience is going. And then I will say that no, currently there are no plans to increase the experience rate for solo players.
Yeah, it takes a little bit longer to solo, but it's a group game. Find a group. It's
Yeah,
fun.
I mean, there's in no way do we want to discourage soloing for the players who want to do that. I mean, there are going to be players who want to do that because they love soloing. There are going to be players who don't necessarily love soloing, but do it because they need to at various times, depending on the time of day and whatever's going on. We don't want to discourage soloing, but if we were to pump the experience gain of soloing up, then soloing is certainly the path of least resistance when it comes to just you don't have to do anything to solo. You just log in and go out and start killing stuff. Whereas putting a group together and that group dynamic requires a little bit more investment. And so while we're happy that soloing is possible under the conditions where it is, and we're happy that there is that avenue for players, it's not something that we want to push into some kind of like an advantageous place over grouping.
Yeah, and it's definitely soloable. I've seen a lot of people out there soloing, so it can be done. Are there any plans, thoughts on how you plan to implement epic quests?
Mm. I mean, I would no, not any kind of like unique or special thing that's worthy of calling out, except um, when most people say Epic Quest, they have the EverQuest Epic Quest in mind, that same moniker and kind of that idea. Um, where we want to, I guess, evolve on that is in that it would be for more than just weapons. That you're going to have epic quests for these like super epic high end abilities for your class. You're going to have epic quests for really unique itemization, something like a glider, for example, or traversal things come to mind. Like some kind of like a skyhold grappler, like that kind of gnomish grappler type thing. There are lots of really cool items that uh, could be the result of epic quests as well. So yes, we will absolutely have epic quests in terms of the scale and scope of the quest, the challenge, the level of investment required. Um, but it'll be for more than just weapons, and they won't necessarily sit as like these kind of in-game capstone things. Like, okay, I'm max level, I I need to get my epic weapon now because that's like the capstone of my class. They won't necessarily sit like that. There will be epic type quests for things that, before you reach max level, that just are epic because they're so grand in scope, and they have so many different steps and requirements and things that go into them. Something that players work towards over a longer period of time. Um, so that's kind of the vision behind what epic quests will be, and certainly we will absolutely have those. Yeah.
So they're going to be sprinkled out through levels.
Hmm. Yeah, and a lot of them
I
will
like
be
that.
will be hidden. A lot of them, they won't be heralded. There'll be things that players catch wind of along the way, and uh, be exciting to uncover them. The one exception to that would be potentially like class abilities, where as part of your progression through your class growth and your faction and your relationship with your kind of your guild house as a class, that those could potentially be the starting points for um, epic ability related epic quests. But on the whole, yeah, there'll be things that you have to discover.
So then would there be epic quests for guilds, or is it all just going to be for individual players?
Well, there will be epic quests that are worthy of guild level effort. So certain kinds of keying type quests that result in gaining access to certain areas, I would count those as epic quests as well. Keying is something, gaining access into locations is something that we like, and uh, there's an opportunity there to really lean into that when it comes to guilds. Um, but outside of there being us getting to the point, and this is a post-launch kind of thing for sure, but outside of us getting to the point where there's guild houses and even like contested kingdoms where guilds are able to vie for control over, there will be opportunities at that stage to introduce some things like that. Um, but that's a ways off.
Oh, come on, guys. You must know that we want to give the guilds some love too, right?
Oh heck yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, what do you think about the potential for confluences between perception paths and class synergies?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think it would be cool. I think it would be cool, but it's it is a level. It introduces a level of complexity that I would say, sadly, is not really congruent with our ability to get the fundamentals of the perception system implemented for launch. There are certain so the perception system is a key pillar differentiator of our game, and it being in place is paramount. And that means the fundamentals of what makes the perception system work foundationally are what's most important right now. There are opportunities to build on that. And, a lot of these things are cool ideas and good ideas, even not just cool ideas, but actually good ideas, meaning they would have a really good place in this game experience. But that's something that would be, put off probably till a post-launch situation while we focus more on getting the fundamentals of perception in place for launch.
That's cool. I like that. All right. Is the basic terrain landmass already generated for the other two continents? What work is done on those?
No, it is not. We don't have any of the landmass of the other two continents generated yet. Our focus is purely on King's Reach right now. That said, where we're at with our terrain and world building tools, when the time comes to get rainfall or white thaw kind of roughed in as far as like the continental landmass, that will happen very quickly when that time comes because of the maturity of those tools. But no, right now we're just focused on King's Reach.
When and how are you closing the leveling gap that apparently happens between 13 and 16 between Manor and Fort, since the new dungeon is also going to be for level 18 plus?
Okay, so ultimately, Halner Cave is meant to sit in that gap. Players can comfortably enter Halner Cave around level 10, at least in a group. So the entry point is right around that level. So Halner Cave is going to play a big role in bridging that gap. But additionally, we are going to be adding some camps that are similar in level, some additional camps that are similar in level to the Manor in AVP before that zone is finished. I'm very aware that there is that gap, that kind of awkward gap right now, and I'm trying to approach it knowing the consternations it creates right now, but also knowing that once Eastern Plains and Silent Plains and Wild's End and Fairthale and these other areas are online, we're witnessing one of the issues that can cause right now because Thronefast has existed by itself for so long that it has kind of taken on all of these additional content pockets, and it feels very full. There's lots of places to go and do. Whereas you go into AVP, and because we're approaching AVP now in this 6 months cadence we're in, we know that there's additional expansions of content that are coming out every 6 weeks, not 6 months, every 6 weeks. And so we're not wanting to overlay in these areas too much because we want there to be impetus for players to move out and actually move into Eastern Plains and Silent Plains and maybe take a trip over to Fairthale or Wild's End to carve out, some places in there as well. So we are aware that there is that gap. We do have things coming that are going to improve that, but I don't think it's going to serve the long-term good to oversaturate where nobody's left like, hey, where do I go right now? Because that's just a byproduct of needing more of the game world online. So we're aware of it. We're going to address it to a degree, and it'll just get better as each season comes along.
Yeah, you guys are going to have to wait a little bit for more content. We'll get there. How will Rangers engage and withdraw abilities work in tandem? Will the cooldown be large enough to prevent spamming, and will they be dependent on class-specific resource?
Okay. Yes. Okay. They will be dependent on a resource, and that resource is momentum. For those of you that have been around long enough, you may have some remembrance of momentum. And they will also have a cooldown associated with them. So they're not spammable in the sense that if you have enough momentum, you can engage and then withdraw and then engage again kind of in rapid succession. They are cooldown based, and they are meant to be they're meant to be abilities that set you up for certain actions. So when I'm at range and I'm firing my bow at range, but I have a certain ability that I really need to use and execute in melee range, I'm going to engage the target. It's going to use some of my momentum, which I don't really want to do as a ranger because my momentum as my momentum grows, my overall DPS is growing along with it because of the bonuses that I get when my momentum is higher. But if I choose to spend some of my momentum to engage, I'm making that decision because of the way it sets up my next melee attack by giving it, some kind of additional bonus or some kind of secondary effect. So if I need to like absolutely shut something down from running away, and I can engage to that target to cover a lot of distance and then use an ability that roots it in place because we need that to happen, then I am going to sacrifice a little bit of momentum in order to do that. And vice versa. When I want to withdraw, when I've been in there tearing it up in melee, but I want to withdraw because we've got ads coming in and I need to start handling things at range, or we've got the pullers pulling like a fearful disposition or fearful trait target that's afraid of fire, and I want to take advantage of that. I'm going to withdraw so I can get my bow out, fire my flare arrow down where I tell it to go, so it can hit right in the path of the puller, and hold that mob back a little bit before it gets to camp. So there are these tactical decisions that rangers will make. Sometimes it might be, as part of I hesitate to use the word rotation because I don't really like it, but there is some kind of rhythm that rangers can carve out of rhythmically engaging and withdrawing, because in its most simplest form, there are bonuses to damage, critical hit chance, and things like that that come with certain abilities after you engage or withdraw. So kind of think of it like that, where if I engage, then that means all of my melee abilities are going to have various benefits that come within a window after engaging. And which one I use is based on which one I decide to use based on those effects. Same with withdrawing. I do that, and there's a window of time where my next ranged ability will benefit in some way or have some kind of bonus, be amplified in some way in that window. So that's kind of the best way I think to think about that mechanic.
Did you say flaro?
I said flare arrow, but
It sounded like flaro to me.
flaro might be the way
It
to
sounded
go.
like flaro to you guys, right? Yeah. It's now flaro.
Flaro.
That works.
Okay.
Speaking of abilities working in tandem, do we have any idea if there will be opportunistic abilities that can only be used if the criteria are met, like how Vanguard had counters and chains?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. In fact, we already have those types of abilities well underway with our weapon techniques. Uh, in that the weapon techniques are able to set up certain effects, and then other weapon techniques are able to capitalize or exploit those effects for an additional effect that will then be exploited by another ability, or just to exploit it kind of in a 1-2 or a 1-2-3 chain, if you will. I don't like the word chain because it's not. When I think of chains, ability chains, I think of things that players can like solo chains. So me as a player, I'm executing 3 abilities in a row that light up for me to execute my chain. That's not what we're talking about. Our weapon techniques are meant to be synergistic with other classes. So I have a weapon technique that someone else can capitalize on. And so I might have a weapon technique like as a monk that I can sweep the target and knock it down and put it in a knocked down state. And then the rogue or the dire lord or whatever it may be might have a technique that exploits that knocked down state to stun the target, or to extend the knocked down state, or to guarantee a critical hit or something to that effect. So we already do have that in play. But where we want to go with that from here is further leaning into it, making it a lot clearer, like to the player, what's going on through like the icons and various things where it's easier to tell that something is in a state that can be exploited. That will improve quite a bit UI wise, and I think will make it more clear that that stuff's happening, and how much of a role it really is meant to play in combat. So.
Awesome. Um, how will the different size races affect climbing? Will it take a gnome longer to climb a wall than an ogre?
No, no plan right now for a race to play a role in climbing. And It's just one of those places where, yes, we could lean into that, but you know, every little bit that we can say, okay, we're gonna just let this be, focus our time, resources elsewhere. We already do plan to lean into that with classes a little bit. Itemization as well will provide a lot of that texture when it comes to how effectively you can climb and things like that. But other than the starting stats or like the racial attributes, that's the extent that race will affect the climbing in the game.
So
Same
if
goes
you
for swimming
have,
and things like that, unless it's like a racial passive. So you can gain some benefits potentially in climbing, potentially in swimming, other forms of traversal through a racial passive. So that would be the one exception, I guess, to what I said.
okay. So if you have an ogre and a gnome right next to each other racing, is the little gnome just going a little bit faster?
No, not unless the gnome has a higher skill. But yeah, that's what I mean. There won't be any kind of advantage like that just based on the race alone, unless a racial trait is in play, like some kind of intrinsic trait to that race. Like dark mer might have intrinsically higher swim speed because they're a dark mer, um, but that doesn't have anything to do with the size of the race.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. If cities are taking a back seat for the time being, are there any plans for places of respite, like a ranger's glade, a rogue's church, a wizard's library? That's kind of what we're using the little towns for right now.
Hmm. Yeah, there's. I don't know what respite means, um, but if we're talking about respite, then yes, res, respite. Respite. That's that. Oh, you smiled. You smiled a little bit. Okay, cool. Um, the we do have areas of respite. We have you know, several villages right now. We've got another few planned as we continue to build out AVP. We've got the Wizard Tower. We've got, you know, cabins in the woods. We've got glades planned certainly. Um, so yeah, absolutely. And we will have some of the player cities, starter cities will be in play, like Sorhireth and Wild's End, for example, and some of the ones that are just a little bit more manageable in scope. Those will be more in play. Scargle is a great example, and I don't necessarily want to list any more just in case, but uh, we do plan to have a
Yeah,
few. Yep.
we'll have Robin here. Um, you guys are awful, by the way. How important is, wait, yeah, no, yes. How important is AC going to be for melee classes? And will that continue to be tweaked? I feel like everything will be continue to be tweaked.
Yeah. Yeah, you could almost put that as a disclaimer on pretty much everything. But yes, AC is meant to be highly valuable. It's a critical stat for all players, not just melee. I really like the state that AC is in right now. We our intent was to make it really meaningful, and it is. The amount of AC that's available to players through gear, through abilities, things like that, will be part of what's continually tweaked, and but you know, yes, it's meant to be highly valuable. It is currently highly valuable, and we're going to continue to build out the game with it as the pillar stat that it is.
Yeah, I don't know how AC wouldn't be highly valuable.
Well, in some games, it just doesn't do much. Like I think that's it's how effective is it, and that swings wildly from game to game. So I think the question is more like, is it intended to be highly effective, as highly effective even as it currently is? And the answer is yes, but how much AC players have access to and things like that is more where the knobs will be tweaking on it.
Yep, those knobs.
Those
Um, the
knobs.
three the three graphics quality settings hit a nice point in terms of graphics clarity and performance. There is a nice trade-off between ultra and normal along with a performance boost, for example. However, there appears to be a much larger gap between fast and normal. The performance difference is large, as is visual clarity. Any chance we could get a setting midway between the two?
Um, that's a Kyle question. I would not look at our current presets, like performance presets right now as highly indicative of where we will land eventually. But when it comes to really getting down to the particulars of that, that's a great question for Kyle. Maybe we can circle back on that one.
Yeah, we're gonna have to ask him in chat or something.
Is he in chat?
Oh, I don't know. Probably not.
I don't see him.
Nah, he's probably got better things to
I
do.
don't see him. Yeah. I don't know what
Um,
that would be, but whatever.
I don't either. I would think that we are the most important thing here, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if camera movement while in first person in combat is a thing that's planned. Someone's curious. I'm not curious, but someone is.
Camera movement in first person in combat.
I don't know what that means. Who asked that?
We're not talking about head bob, right? Because head bob is moving. Head bob is running. So we're talking more like if I'm swinging my sword, I'm seeing my camera kind of like dip down and then come back up, and it's trying to mimic like where my head is moving in combat. Maybe. Um, I I mm,
What what do you
we have
so
not
while you're in
discussed.
combat, you don't move
Yeah,
at
we've
all?
not discussed first person camera movement. We have discussed and do plan to make changes to like the visibility of like hands and weapons and things like that when you're in combat in first person. Um, but we haven't actually discussed like camera movement or anything like that. Not, I'm not saying we won't do it. I am saying that it's one of those things, just like head bob, where it's kind of like a lot of people just hate it. They can't handle it, and I'm one of them. I tend to not respond super well to a lot of like camera movement when I'm playing. Obviously, it would be an option you could turn on and off, but as far as if we'll put time into that, I can't. I would say probably not. Uh, if we did, it would be really subtle, and if we did, it would be something we'd do if we had time, which is time's not something we have a lot of luxury in right now.
Yeah.
So
Let's
yeah,
get some races and classes first, and then we'll start worrying about
yeah,
that,
yeah.
huh?
But I mean, obviously, it's a good question. Like asking these kind of questions, even though I think lucky thing you're the person that asked the question. I think is what I saw. I mean, please feel free to ask these kind of questions. And it wasn't you. It wasn't you. I didn't mean it was
It
you.
was Reef
It was
Walk.
Reef
Reef
Walk.
Walk.
Yes. Okay. Reef Walk. Sorry. Great question. And there's nothing wrong with asking questions like that, even though I'm sure Reef Walk you would agree. Like it's not like at the top of the list, and we don't obviously think that you thought it was. Um, but it's definitely something that we'll take a better look at, a closer look at. You know, one of the next questions is about swimming, and I'm going to go ahead and dip into that real quick to make this point because these kind of questions come up a lot. I think it's actually the next question: when is this going to be implemented? Is this going to be implemented, and if so, when? And with our new approach, with our season's approach to development, a lot of these things are going to happen when they need to happen for the content that we're creating. So with swimming, for example, I cannot give an ETA right now on when swimming's coming in, but I can say it will almost certainly be when one of our season headline kind of content releases requires it. So something like the well pond in Mad Run or some other form of content that requires swimming, that is when we will focus on that system and get it implemented. So even though that's not going to answer everybody's question about when this, when that, you can infer some sense of what we're going to be working on based on what is the content that's coming out. Of course, once we've released what that is, and you guys can start kind of getting your heads wrapped around it. Um, but in a similar way, something like camera movement and some of those things that will come at a point in time when we're ready to focus on the player controller again, first person improvements and whatnot.
That makes sense. Why would we work on swimming right now? We have other stuff to do. We'll get
Because it's
swimming
freaking
in when we
awesome,
have.
and I hate not having it in. That's one
Do
reason why
you?
we would work on it. Yeah, oh my gosh,
I don't know. I kind of
I
like
can't handle it.
walking across the water.
Oh no, no,
I'm
no, no, no,
lazy.
no, 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 no. No, we need that water in there. We need that murky. Oh man, just the sound of like going under the water and just it's terminus. It's a crazy place. Like I yeah, I'm excited about that. But
We'll get there.
we'll get there.
Okay. So, death penalty. We don't have it right now. When were we getting it back? And yeah, sooner, later, when?
um
I know. I'm a
I,
professional.
I'm, I'm not laughing because it's funny. That wasn't why I laughed. I can't give you that. I'm sorry. This isn't a you laugh you lose, is it? No. We should totally do that.
We should. Yeah.
I love those. Uh, try not to laugh. I'm sure that just raised my estimation in everybody's eyes. Um,
I don't
so
know.
risk versus reward is obviously that's an immutable pillar of Pantheon, right? That's one of the most fundamental things that Pantheon's predicated on death penalty. There being real risk in the gameplay. However, it's not really super conducive to testing. When you've got a game that you're still working through lots of bugs, you're still working through players getting stuck on a random rock or tree, players uh, dying and then respawning at their bind point, and they fall, 150,000 meters to their death and get stuck under the ground. Um, Death penalties just don't work really well with testing. So, when is it coming back? It's going to be a while. It's going to be a while. We we don't really gain anything right now by having it in. The exception to that will be if we decide to focus test certain aspects of it, we'll turn it back on for a period of time to do that. But with the potential for wipes, being in the mix with bugs and things that pop up that put players in really precarious states, out of their control, the whole nine yards. It's just not something we're going to have in play right now.
I think that makes sense. I mean, we can bring the death penalty back when we're ready to focus on it, right?
That's right.
So, do we track the location of a player's death and will we eventually get representation of that? I don't know why, like what? Do you guys want like a glowing path to your corpse?
Well, I think what they're saying, well, because there's no death penalty, then there's nothing left on your body when you die. So the corpse doesn't hang around for very long at all. Um, and so it seems like there's no representation of someone's corpse. But once the death penalty is on, and you actually have items on your corpse, then your corpse will stay. It will, follow certain parameters for player corpses, and that's already a thing that we already have corpses that are left. It's just that the death penalty isn't active right now.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys wouldn't remember corpses. There's so many of them. I like Ronick. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's how Terminus is fertilized.
Yep. Corpses and tears. Can we get some clarification on the LAS in regards to buffs? What is the intention with them? If I drop Windstrider from my bar, is it by design that it drops from everyone, or do you want it to stick around? Oh, back to LAS.
Mhm.
Guys,
It is by design that it fades from your targets when you remove it. That is by design as it's currently working. And the idea there is that it's reinforcing the importance of what abilities you choose to have slotted at any given time. So if I've got Windstrider slotted on my bar, then it's on my bar so that it persists, and I have to make that conscious choice whether I'm going to have it on or take it off. Now, that being said, there is something important about the social dynamic of buffing other people and being able to do drive-by buffs and things like that. I understand. I don't just understand it. I feel it too. Um, so, in the spirit of wanting to capture that, um, we are considering some different ways to approach this. So I'll leave it at that for right now. To know for clarity's sake, right now that's working as intended. But in terms of if we will be putting something else in place or tweaking that to allow for some social buffing, that's that is a potential and something we're exploring. So, yeah.
Ooh, so it's up for discussion.
I mean, it's more that kind of like brainstorming phase of what we feel like is the strongest alternative paths to experiment with. Um, I do feel like social buffing is important, but at the same time, it it's I don't really want to get too deep into this right now because it can open up into a greater discussion because there's as great as social buffing is, there's a lot that comes a lot of baggage that comes with that as well. And we need to but just don't want to be so and I don't mean this negatively towards anyone or even myself, but I don't want to be so blinded by nostalgia that we're not looking carefully at some of the negatives, some of the bad results that came from social buffing and the kind of behaviors that it drove. Um, Whereas having something cleaner where you're able to bring your full measure in your group and you're incentivized to bring certain classes with you in your group and not just have that pocket shaman or cleric in the town you can go grab these buffs from and then run off and not take one with you. Um, there's some pretty unfortunate things that can happen with that. So it is working as intended right now. It's something that we're working through and trying to really consider it from all angles and keep you guys posted.
All right. So where are we? Shaman buffs claim they scale with con, but when you cast a buff, only the caster is getting the extra bonus. Are the buffs supposed to scale with the con and benefit everyone or just the caster?
Hmm. That's okay. That's a bug. Yeah, the con bonus is meant to benefit you as well as your target. So it sounds like that's not working as intended right now.
Add it to the list. How is ranged attack situation looking? What challenges and what weapons are there to the system, and how will you be implementing your vision for it?
Well, it's the range combat system will be fairly straightforward to implement. In fact, before the refactor, we actually had uh, the range combat system implemented to a large degree. Um, and I remember, back then, and even just kind of bringing it up a few times with Kyle since then, it's not a major lift, to get a range combat system in place. Uh, when we get to it, I want visible arrow projectiles that look and sound great. That's part of the vision, if you will, for the range combat system. I want the sound of that arrow, leaving the bow, flying through the air, hitting their target. I want that to sound really good, really crunchy, really meaty. Um, I want the ability to click and fire certain projectile abilities. So we talked about the flaro earlier, and other abilities like that, where you can actually engage a ranged ability from range based on where you click, both on the ground, wall, ceiling, things like that. Um, I definitely want our animations. That's a big part of it. The animations being able to flow seamlessly between melee and ranged. I remember that's something Kyle and I worked on for a little bit, just kind of honing that in. Where when you move forward into melee range, shifting from your bow to your melee weapons, and then shifting back as you leave, like that's something that we want to look good, clean, smooth. And I'm still determined to get Silent Arrow implemented, which is the ability to manually aim and fire that specific ability, and some really cool things I want to do to capitalize on that. I am still set on that being a thing. So there's that, and there's implications of that for some other classes as well. A manually aimed fireball sounds pretty cool to me. Um, I think being able to step into that mode with a special ability and having some kind of benefit that can come from a manual aim shot like that would be really sweet. Even though, again, I mean, obviously we're not an action combat game. We're gonna kind of spoof it feeling like that a little bit based on still being in a tab target sense. But we've already discussed it. It's viable to do. I mean, Kyle's here in chat. He can he can shoot my logic down if I'm wrong. But I know we've discussed it before, and I'm really excited about getting something like that in.
Ah, Kyle's on board.
Yeah, yeah.
This isn't on the list, but are clerics getting more buffs? Some people feel like maybe the clerics aren't getting enough.
I've already said this. So cleric is my main, right? So if I give clerics too much love now, you know, it's it's not going to go well.
It's
So
gonna look
if I
bad.
act like I hate them for now, and then I wait until we get a little closer to launch, and then all of a sudden they transcend, then I'm just saying,
Yeah, still not better than a monk though, right?
just saying.
So long term is the expectation to have 3 different sewing professions: leatherworking, outfitting, clothier, and you can only choose one?
So I am going to defer that answer to Neff, who is also in chat, um,
Neff
and the
says
answer
no.
is and the answer is no. That was easy. Thanks, Neff.
There we go. Have you settled on any design ideas for the elves yet? And when can we expect to hear more about them?
Well, just for viewers, so the to further answer that question, this also just Neff kind of clarifying. You will have a single profession, and then you will be able to specialize in different ways within it if you so choose. So it's a little bit extra context for that question. Um, as far as elves go, our elves are going to be slightly shorter, but again, knowing there's going to be some character creation sliders where you can adjust height a little bit, really think of elves being relatively similar in height to humans. The difference with elves is that they're going to be sleeker and more slender, and just generally have a more refined looking body, face in comparison. Now, I say that to steal a little bit of Bronson's thunder, but we are kind of filling out our humans a little bit. So, yeah, Finn, I anticipated this response coming. Like, what do you mean skinnier than the humans? So the humans are going to get a little bit. I don't want to say beefier, but you know what I mean. Like we're filling. Basically, put it this way: the way humans look right now in armor, where they kind of fill out a little bit and they look more reasonable. That's how we want them to look baseline. Um, so if you imagine humans being more in that state, then our elves we're targeting to be slightly slimmer and more refined and sleek in their body type and their face and things like that.
But my human's abs aren't going away, right? Because that's the only place I
That's
can
up to
get
you,
those.
Seb.
Oh,
I,
the abs
yeah,
on the human are amazing.
yeah. Like
Thank
I
you,
mean,
Bronson.
we're all in control of our own abs, unless you were talking about your character.
My character. I
Your
have
character.
no abs. Yeah.
I don't. I have them. You just can't see them. That's
They're there somewhere
yeah.
under my Cheetos. Can you talk a little bit about your ideas for light sources? Like what items will have the ability to produce light?
Yes. This is what I was deferring to later in the conversation because I've been excited about this. Okay, so um, the game's been too dark for a while, right? We can all agree. Too dark. There's a ton of people streaming Pantheon right now, and I love it. I've been loving it, but every time I see Pantheon streams, it's it's dark. It's so dark, and it's hard to see what's going on. And it's the collective cry from internally here of like we can't see anything. So one of our big goals in this time leading up to season 2 is we've done a pretty substantial lighting update. Thank you, Bronson. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Steve. All of you contributing to that effort. And was running around in there yesterday, and nighttime is feeling a lot better. I mean, we obviously don't want to get rid of nighttime feeling like nighttime, but we're it's a lot better. It visually is a lot better. But one of the big issues that we've been having is with player light sources. And that is because players have torches, players have lantern belts, players have mage light, and typically you will see groups moving into dark places, subterranean places, 6 people with, you know, 3 different light sources per person. And you do the math, you've got like 18 different lights all active, and it's causing this huge blowout of brightness. And it also doesn't look great because the caves don't feel cave-like. Um, so now that's shifted a little bit because as we've worked on our internal lighting for caves, there's a natural way where it's dampening light a little bit, and some of the light sources don't seem to be, uh, haven't really been that effective either. And so we've been in this constant kind of tug of war with light and player light sources. Here's where we've landed, and here's what you can expect for season 2. Number 1, we are, as of right now, we're removing lantern belts for now. They're not being removed as an item, they're not being removed as an idea or a concept, but for right now, to get lighting where we want it to be, we're starting by reducing our variables, right? So lantern belts gone. The second big change that's happening is mage light is being moved back in its level or its ability that you're not going to get until a later level. It's going to be self only, and it's going to have an upkeep cost. There's going to be a cost to it. Now, with that, that means that we can make mage light much more effective as a light source, because right now it's Sav. I was going to have a really funny analogy, and it died. It didn't come to me. I thought you were going to slip me one, but you didn't. That's okay. I don't even remember where I was. Yes, mage light. It's going to have an upkeep cost, and that means you're not going to have it on forever, but you're going to use it when you need to use it. You're going to use it when you want to use it, or when it's advantageous, but you're going to use it tactically. That leaves the torch. Now, there's a couple of cool things that have changed about the torch. Number 1, the radius at which the torch throws light has increased pretty significantly. So torches are going to be a more effective light source, and we've dialed it in pretty nicely, in my estimation, to where it's not like blowing out your face and your character. It's not like way over bright right on you, but it's throwing out light really nicely. But the reason we're leaning into the torch right now is because we want, number 1, we're lifting the overall light. So it's not like you need a torch just to go anywhere. If it's in the dead of night, you can still see relatively well as long as you're not in shadow. So one of the reasons Thrown Fast and even AVP have felt really dark is because there's so much tree cover, and you're often in shadow and you may not even realize it. Whereas once we get into like Silent Plains or even like the back half of AVP where it's a lot more open, you're going to notice that it's going to feel a lot brighter. But you're not going to need torches as critically in all cases as you have been, because darkness is going to be just a little bit brighter in general. We're also approaching our subterranean areas, Mad Run included, as places where there's some good range, good high dynamic range. So you're not going to need a torch out at all times to see, even in subterranean areas, because we're going to have, sections and areas and moments where light will be present. And then we'll have areas where it's dark and you will need to pull out the torch. Now, here's the part that we're excited to kind of see how it plays out. The reason why you will need to consider light in these areas is because of some changes we've made recently. And that is, number 1, NPCs that are considered to be in darkness you will not be able to visibly see their nameplate. And so if an NPC is down the hall from you, and they're not in the range of a light source, be it a player light source or some kind of a light source that's in the environment, you're not going to be able to see their nameplate. And Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, but the addition to that is you're also not supposed to be able to tab target them, which I don't know if we've slid that one in just yet. Maybe that is on the list or slipped the list or whatever. But that's the intent, is that you literally cannot interact with them if they're in darkness, because they're technically not visible. So you're not going to be able to tab target and just kind of cycle through everything, 20, 30, 40, meters away from you and figure out what's there, and you're not going to be able to see the nameplates. Once you draw too close to them with a light source present, the nameplates will appear and you'll be able to target them. And the other really cool thing about that is it doesn't even have to be your own personal light source. You can have someone run out ahead with a torch, and if they illuminate the target, even if you're 50 meters away, you will then be able to see the nameplate of the target because they're technically considered visible and in light. So it's a really cool mechanic. It looks really cool. It feels very immersive as we've been testing it. I was testing it with Kyle in the Mad Run area the other day, and it's like, I mean, it's just darkness because it's nighttime, and it's like, I won't say anything about like the area, but it's very dark. And he pulls out a torch, and all of a sudden I can see him, and I can see some of the NPCs right next to him because they're in range of that light, even though I'm like 50 meters away. And then when he runs away, as that light kind of moves with him away, then that NPC, that nameplate fades away and disappears. And it feels very good. It feels very immersive. Now, please understand, as with any new system, we're going to need to feel it out. We're going to need to make iterative tweaks and things to it. So expect there to be some places where it feels a little wonky and we haven't quite looked at it from every single angle. But the goal here is to dial this in to where light, when it's needed, feels like it's a meaningful decision that you're making, as it has that interplay with the NPCs and the environment and whatnot. And the hope is that by having it relegated right now to torches as kind of the main source of light, since torches are an offhand item, you're not going to want everybody running around with torches. You're going to want to designate a certain person or a couple of people to have them out or pull them out when they're needed. And that's going to, ultimately cut down on how much light was just overused in these areas, by kind of tying it to some of these gameplay mechanics. So I'm excited to see how all this stuff plays out in general. But lighting will be a big, topic, something that we're really excited to get a lot of feedback on during season 2.
That sounds freaking awesome. I love that. But am I gonna have to put my torch away to punch things in the face
Well, yeah,
in game?
in game. Yeah, yeah. Or you may have to decide to run without one, and that's kind of what I'm expecting anyway. Is that the classes that aren't needing to utilize that offhand, obviously your shield bearers, your dual wielding classes, they're not going to want to sacrifice those things to carry a torch. But some of the other classes who don't have an active offhand, for example, can, and in some cases, yeah, you'll have to make that call to use the torch as opposed to another item in your offhand. And of course, that has implications for combat and weapon switching and things like that. So don't treat this as some kind of like we're going to roll it out and it's set in stone and the way it works right now is the way it's always going to be. There's going to be tweaks. There's going to be pain points. There's going to be things that we dial in. The main thing we're looking for here is an approach to darkness and light that makes these items feel more meaningful, so that when we do bring lantern belts back, when we do eventually have things like light stones, flareos, and other things like that, that we have a good baseline for the interplay here. That's all.
So we're gonna need feedback on this. Feedback and opinions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Testers need to be testing.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I'm perfectly comfortable with punching stuff in the dark, so I will not use my torch, but...
Oh, and one final thing, fractures that lean into darkness or obfuscated vision, like gloom, they're gonna benefit from this system too. Let's leave it at that. Might be a little bit harder to see the NPCs in there, which, not that anyone is asking for things to be harder to see in gloom, but there you go.
Yes, we are. Yes, make it difficult.
The one thing that I want is for it to be harder to see in the gloom fracture. If these guys could do anything, it would be that. Gloom's going to change quite a bit. expect as we move along, expect what's currently gloom to end up kind of being more like the darkness that we've talked about, like really oppressive darkness, and expect gloom to end up being something more similar to if you've played Breath of the Wild and you remember the Lost Woods and kind of the smoky mist that encompasses that area, and there being a little kind of radius around you that you can see, but beyond that, you really can't. It's like a very solid. But then us having items and artifacts, that will increase the range of that kind of radius around you that will make it easier to see in that environment. So expect a little shift there visually for gloom. Treat gloom right now almost as if it were like the darkness fracture in a way in terms of how it visually looks.
That's very exciting. Those are going to be fun to see. Okay, we just have a couple questions left. So, shared bank, yes, no, when?
Undecided, no ETA. Sorry.
Will cloaks eventually be a visible item?
Yeah, they will. Yep.
I saved the short ones for the end. That's all I got. You guys have
Yeah.
anything else? We can take a couple, like guilds. Guilds when?
I am pushing for guilds. That's we need them. We need, and when I say guilds, I mean guild tags, guild chat, uh, just the guild kind of infrastructure. So we need to pick which season we want to drop that into. But yeah, we're really excited about getting guild support in. I see
Yeah,
player housing.
definitely. Stop.
Yeah.
Get out of here, guys. All right. Real quick, ogres, do we have a progress update on that?
They're coming along well. We've got what we're working on right now is the armor and the kind of the armor fitting process. We're making the tweaks like I was talking about earlier to the humans as well, and we're kind of packaging all that together. So the tweaks we're making to the human form, the armor fitting for that new form, the ogre, and a lot of new armor. There's gonna be a lot of new armor coming in with those races. And some of it you guys have seen, and I wish we had. I don't know if we have any pictures ready to show of any of that, but as soon as we can drop some pictures of the ogre and a lot of the armor that's coming with it, I think it'll be a really, really strong drop. It's looking really, really good.
Okay, real quick, we're doing some stuff for season 2 for levels and on the test servers. You want to explain real quick what's happening there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the plan right now, when season 2 drops, is there is going to be a new server that opens up, and man, it's been a long day, so I just want to check real quick and make sure that I'm repeating this accurately on what Rizel and I talked through. Okay, yeah. So there's going to be a new server that opens up, and everybody who is level 22 or above is going to be moved to that new server. Not asked if they want to. It's going to be a required move. Everybody 22 and above. Everyone who's under level 22 can also move to that new server if they choose to, if they want to. So it's free for anybody to move to if they're under level 22. But if you are level 22 and above, you will be moved to that server. Everyone who's level 21 and below will continue on Avendir. The reason for this, we're going to clean this up in prep for season 3, but the reason for this is we need to build in essentially a level cap for each of our seasons that relates to the content of that season to make sure that players aren't able to advance too far past that. Having not done that in prep for this season, we've had enough of the player base that had advanced past kind of the core level range of bad run that it's just put them obviously of no fault of their own at all, because I would rather players enjoy playing Pantheon and keep going as far as they want and not like worry about any of this stuff, which is why I'm glad we landed on the solution that we did. But being that level range kind of puts them to some degree out of the range that's going to be most effective for us data wise for testing. And so this solution, kind of puts them in a place where they can kind of do their thing, what they're going to do, even though they're going to be pretty well out leveled from that content. But then also creates an environment where the highest level players are more kind of right at that, right at that kind of like uh, sweet spot level range to address the content. You will be able to if you are one of those players that opts to move over to the new server and you're not level 22 or above, then you can freely move back, to Avendir if you choose. And tentatively right now, our plan is to, in that mid-season patch that we do, is to merge the two servers back together. So the goal here is not to like split the servers and then keep these two servers up forever. The goal here is to try and kind of, shape the day one launch date of this a little bit, and then mid-season point we would merge the servers back together and kind of bring the full population back. This does not affect your items. All of your items stay intact. All of your skills, all your money, all your, this doesn't affect anything but your level, in terms of which, if you get moved to that server or not. But all of your items and everything else will come with you.
Yep, there's that. Real quick, warriors, are they gonna get their masteries and abilities anytime soon?
It's coming. It's not been the focus right now, for me, but it's coming. And but I'll say this, just so there's no surprise, even though it's not something that 100% decided yet. I'm just not sure yet. But there's a chance that I might just turn mastery off for a period of time altogether and just kind of remove it from the playing field for a while, because I think it's causing there's enough of discrepancy there that's causing players to just kind of get stuck on how much mastery they have and what abilities they have mastery for. And again, haven't made the decision yet, and I'm open to feedback. Like, I'm open to input, whether I want to hear from you guys, but am considering that as a possibility. And I think it will also, in some ways, because it feels like it's a good point in time to look at the baseline abilities as well and see kind of how they're measuring up, without mastery in play. Because I'm seeing some comments about like, well, what's that going to do to healing, or what's that going to do here? And so anyway, just something I'm considering, but definitely not a decision yet. Open to feedback. And when it comes to just introducing more mastery, it is on the list of important things to do, and we'll get time soon enough to get more of those in.
Okay, I think that gets group loot. Do
Troop
we
Snoot?
know group loop Groot?
Loop Groot.
Yep.
Group loot options. Is Steve here?
I don't know.
Steve.
I can
Where are you, Steve? He's not here. Maybe
we'll have
Rob.
to
Rob,
make
do you
more
know? Has Steve
people.
put any time into group loot stuff? I know that we've talked about it. I know that he knows. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. It's not a heavy lift for Steve. It's just, again, it's just all about when it slots in. So we know exactly what options we want to put in. We just haven't done it yet. But another thing it's key, especially as I know you guys are kind of memeing me a little bit when it comes to Mad Run, and yeah, you said this is going to be super challenging every time, and it ends up being like a wet noodle kind of thing. I accept the fact that might happen again, but I am expecting this to be a highly challenging situation, and I also am not kidding when I say the itemization is going to be significant. So when it comes to the criticality of group loot options when it comes to the kind of ninja looting activities that's been going on here and there, the last few weeks, we may see a spike in that. And it may be that getting some group loot options in some droop snoot loot groups might be better to do sooner than later. So, not a commitment of a time frame, but it is on our radar.
Yep. All right. Droop snoot. I like it. Okay, that's all the questions, guys. This is running really long. I do
awesome.
want to I do want to let you guys know
terrible.
that this is awful.
It's
Answering
why would
questions and
we
making
want to
people
keep doing
happy.
this?
Don't
Why
know.
would we want to talk to our community? Goodness
Really don't know.
gracious. Ah,
I don't even know why I'm here. We're gonna do an event before we close out the season on Friday. So on Friday at 6 p.m. PDT, we're gonna be spawning something. I got permission from Joppa to spawn. What am I spawning, Joppa?
well, it's it's Karagos's last kind of hurrah as a glorified bear. So
Yep, he's got
if
to
you
be
ever
fixed.
wanted if you ever wanted to fight a dragon that's really a low level bear at heart, now's your chance. I will
Yeah,
say that the Karagos of season 2 is be on a different level, a little bit of a different story. So if you want to experience Karagos before he goes through his transformation, then this would be a good opportunity to do that.
yeah. You need the bragging rights, you guys. If you want to get the bragging rights that you've killed him, then yeah, this is your chance, because after this, he's going to be a whole nother thing. We're not here for the certificate, Sushi. You're gonna have to talk to Neff about that.
Actually, that certificate was made by Tyler, one of
Oh, really?
our previous designers. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he threw that certificate on there, and shout out Sacred.
Oh, yay. All
I
right.
don't know what this
Well,
means, by the way. I don't know what that means. I don't ever do that, and I just did though. So here it is.
yeah, you did.
Yeah. What?
All right,
What were we gonna say?
let's wrap this up. Well,
Hmm?
let's wrap this thing up.
Okay.
Yep. So, thank you, Chris Perkins, for answering everybody's questions. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we will see you. Oh God, they just show up.
Oh, Justin.
We'll see you next month for more questions and answers.
I'm sorry. That got me. That was so perfect. Oh, that guy.